Good morning. My name is Ryan Opal with Localized by Light and Variable. I first want to start off by thanking Launchpad City for hosting this event and for 1 Million Cups Frisco chapter for having me out. I've presented at the Dallas chapter before, and it's an honor to be up here in Frisco with y'all, and thank you all for showing up today and giving me your time. Localize is the product of an idea I had on vacation about 2.5 years ago. My wife and I went up to Breckenridge, Colorado. Over the course of the week, I found myself getting frustrated by the limited functionality, the limited usability of the standard review sites and traditional social media. In specific instances, we were looking for a coffee shop to go to for Wi-Fi and to spend an afternoon doing some work. And then being in Breckenridge, Colorado, there's a million trails up there, and I wanted to get some current status of the trails. What are the technicalities of it? What's a good 5-mile loop versus an out and back? That kind of stuff that I really couldn't find on a standard review site, and without a prior connection on social media, I didn't have the people to ask. I realized that what I was looking for was the ability to find specific locals based on common shared interest and then ask them a question. I wasn't necessarily interested in following them or becoming a Facebook friend, because I don't really care what they're doing a month from now. I'm just looking for real-time, accurate information. Nope. So we come home from the vacation. I do not have a background in development. I'm a helicopter pilot by trade. I work for CareFlight. That's my normal 9-to-5 job. But as a CareFlight pilot, I had time on shift, on a 12-hour shift where we're on standby, where I could work on this kind of stuff. And so I took an online class in coding. I built up the first version of Localize, and it was released on the App Store January 26, 2016. The very next day, Facebook announced that they were shutting down the parse server on which I had built the app, and it was a back-end service that made it really easy for a guy like me with no background to have a back-end service that was pretty much just cut and paste. At the same time, we were also pregnant with our first, and as it so often happens, life got in the way, and a year later, Facebook shut down Parse, and I hadn't really gone back and looked at the code. After 6 months of working on it nonstop, we were pregnant, I was tired, I took a break, I kept thinking, I'll come back to it, I'll come back to it, I'll come back to it. I never did. So fast forward about another 6 months, and I noticed a couple things. Yelp implemented this Ask a Question function. It's right there on each individual business page, and it allows users to post questions about that business to the users that have reviewed that business. Then I dug a little deeper in their settings, and there is actually a chat function on Yelp, but it's really not obvious to get to, and there's really no way to filter it where you can look for specific users or specific topics. Then Google came out with this local guides, which is local people kind of giving their own reviews about their local area. So I got to thinking, if Google is doing something local related, if Yelp is implementing this ask a question function, maybe I should revisit this idea. It had been about 1.5 years since I had really looked at the code. The Swift language had been updated. I had gone from a line pilot into a training role, so I have a more 9-to-5 schedule, so I didn't have the time to really devote to the development. So I went and found a contract developer, handed him my file and said, look, this is very amateur. My backend service got shut down. Can you at least get it back up and running and clean up this code that I did this first round through? So what we have now, this was re-released back in January, and it is a very, very pared down version of the app. But it at least accomplishes the basic function, which is you open up the app and it says, you're right here. And it's not a very good example because there's 0 closest locals in this example, but it shows you how many locals are nearby your current location. And then down here, it allows you to ask a local. Give the question a title, and then you ask your question right there. You hit post, and the recipients receive a push notification, much like a text message that says, hey, someone's asked a question in your area. You open it up, and you can reply if you want to. So what's different about Localize versus some of the standard review sites or traditional social media? Well, I went and started talking to my small local businesses, and the consistent thing that I found out is that their relationship with Yelp is tenuous at best. It's out there. They kind of recognize that if there's smoke, there's probably fire, but there's really more of a focus on the negative than on the positive. And from my perspective, I've got to go and look at each individual business for their reviews when I'm more interested in talking to someone who's familiar with the area and getting their input on a question that I may have. So that's kind of focus on the local area, not the individual businesses, and then expand beyond businesses to include activities and other attractions. I like to go biking, hiking, running, so I want to get information on some activities that aren't traditionally covered by the standard review sites. I say MVP, it is actually live on the App Store right now, but it's very basic. In order for this to really go anywhere, we've got to go beyond just the basic geolocation and post a question. My initial version allowed you to filter for people based on their activities and interest. And then as a helicopter pilot, I don't have a lot of background in marketing, user-based growth, or financial and business development. So that's why I'm here. I'm pitching the idea, looking for networking opportunities and feedback from the community on how to take this to the next step. Thank you guys again.
Okay, Ryan, thank you very much for the presentation. So let me get things started a little bit. So this is an app?
Yes, sir.
A purchased app or free app?
Currently free, Apple only.
Okay. And how do people know about it today?
Family and friends.
Okay.
And my immediate network right now. The first version, I reached out to a first responder network as part of the Care Flight family and the first responder family. I always had the idea that, well, firefighters, police, they're a wealth of knowledge about their own local area. So my first route was to go through that community, and there's a website that's a first responder community that has a couple 100,000 followers, and they posted about it, but it was mainly in the DFW area. After the initial version was shut down, this second version has all been just word of mouth.
And how many members do you have right now, would you say?
I think last I checked, I have about 50.
Okay. And it's all local at this point?
Yes, sir. Everybody that's signed up so far is in the Metroplex area.
Okay. Questions? Yeah, we have to keep the microphone as we ask questions so we get on video.
Is there a rating system for like locals, like their opinion or anything like?
Not currently. So the first version, everything that was on there was what I was able to figure out as a new developer. When I went back with the contract developer, just due to cost restraints, we weren't able to implement a lot of the functions that I wanted. So that would be my next step, is user ratings, so that you know if 5 locals pop up based on common interest, you can see which ones are more trustworthy. So that's an implementation that I would like to have, but I just haven't been able to put it in so far.
Cool, thanks.
Do you have a criteria to be in there? Like if you want to add a local in the app?
Not at this time. The basis of my idea was everybody knows some local area. Everybody's from somewhere, or they live somewhere. They've all got input to add. So there's no, you have to be a local expert. It's just when you sign up, you define your local area, and then when people are in your area, they have the ability to ask you a question. So there is no criteria, and that goes back to his question. Ultimately, I would like to have a rating system because I know there's Yelp super users, and some people really get active on this kind of thing, and I want to be able to promote the people that are really active. But at this point, no, there is no filter or requirement, and I really haven't thought about putting one on there unless it became evident further down the road that it was necessary.
Thank you for being here. Is there any incentive, or will there be an incentive for the locals to provide information, some sort of gamification?
It's a two-part answer. In general, well, let me start over. In the example where this idea came from in Breckenridge, it's a small town, it's a tourist environment, so the people that are local to that area have an inherent incentive to promote their area. More than likely, the guy that is interested in hiking and biking either works at or knows someone who works at one of the many outfitter stores in there. So he's got the incentive to promote his local business, and in a small community, it helps to cross-promote. From the user standpoint, or someone like in Dallas, where it's not necessarily a tourist destination, my incentive is I've got the sandwich shop down the street that I go to 5 days a week. I've never reviewed them, and That being said, I've recommended them numerous times. If there was a way for that business to see, hey, Ryan, you've recommended us 20 times last month, here's a free sandwich. There's that kind of incentive, and then just the altruistic sharing of information. But as far as concrete incentives, those are the two examples that I use the most.
Well, it sounds like that could be one of your primary markets, could be businesses looking to just have a presence and promote themselves or be an expert voice.
Yes, and that is a two-part response. Most common question I get is, how do you monetize this, or how do you create revenue from it? And I'm not a big fan of traditional pop-up advertising kind of thing. So I always thought businesses could have a business membership. And so when you are searching for, hey, I'm in Breckenridge, who's got local craft beer and may have live music? Well, I'll get the locals, but then I'll get the member businesses, and they have the opportunity to respond. So I could call up each individual business and talk to the receptionist or the bartender and say, hey, do y'all have anything going on tonight? What are your specials? Or I could just post a question that populates to the 5 bars in the area, and then they would each have the opportunity to respond, and that would be like a premium type membership. The other opportunity would be to sell the data to the businesses so that they can see what kind of questions are being asked in their area and what the locals are saying as far as answers. Are they recommending this business, or are they recommending the other business, and why? So that kind of goes to the business aspect of it.
Well, thank you again for being here, and I really did enjoy your presentation. And I think what you just said on the revenue model, I actually like better than the traditional pop-up advertising. Love to talk to you some more about that. I have a lot of experience with that, and I do think that might be a good way for you to do it, both approaches. I do have a question about just the rollout.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's because I don't have a ton of experience with this type of app. But one of the concerns I would have is if I'm a user and I go to your app and there's not hardly any locals, like, is there a way for you to roll it out by territory? And would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
So that goes beyond my expertise when it comes to marketing and business development. When I did the first initial version of Localize, everything that I had heard when I was learning about the programming was, expect that Apple's going to reject your first submission. So I had been working on it, got to kind of a point where I didn't really have anything to add, or I didn't know how to add any more functionality. I was like, well, I might as well submit it to Apple. They're going to reject it and tell me what I need to fix. And I kept thinking, I'll deal with the rollout stuff later on. Well, when I submitted my first version to Apple, they approved it on the first round, and I was like, okay. I wasn't really expecting that, so it was kind of a good problem to have, because I hadn't really planned ahead, but now here it was live, and I was kind of scrambling with what to do next. The second time around, I just wanted to get it back up and running so that I had a product that I could show people and get it back up and running, and then decide what am I going to do from there. I do understand the idea of rolling out territorially, but I like the idea better of going full scale, because the whole idea is if I go to Breckenridge and it's only been released in Dallas, well, now it doesn't do me any good. I understand the benefit of proving it in one area, but that goes beyond my knowledge and my skill set.
Thank you.
Great presentation. So I'm looking on your app, and so I have previous experience with Southwest Airlines and their community. They used to have a thing called, oh my goodness, I can't even remember right now, but it was a community thing, and basically you just go in there and add that type of information. They X that. But what I'm looking for on your app are like pictures of live music. I'm looking for pictures of people that are biking, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, so like, oh, they resonate with me.
Yes.
So do you have plans to add that? Or, because it seems like you're now getting more into the Yelp and like business-y thing versus the initial when you were saying you were looking for things to do in a particular city.
So as I flesh out the idea of what I want it to be, when I pop up in a location and there's maybe 4 or 5 locals that fit the criteria, if I'm looking for information on trails, I'm going to look for people who have hiking or mountain biking in their profile. I would love to see member profile pictures and more fleshed out member profiles. And then that way I can select even further which members or users are most likely going to be able to answer the question that I have. And then I'm not against the idea of reviews. I just find that reviews by themselves only get you so far. My biggest complaint is that when we go out, my wife starts scrolling through Yelp, and it may narrow it down to 5 or 6, but it's going beyond that. So I'm not opposed to the idea of reviews. I think there is some functionality and some benefit to it. I love the idea of posting pictures because, like, when I give people information about an area, I want to be able to show them, well, here's a map, here's the best place to start, this and that. So I like that idea. That just goes beyond what I'm able to implement at this point.
So my question is, if I'm in a local area, I get that there's businesses and places that definitely want to help me out, but what about the actual folks that are on the bikes? They may not want you there if you're not good enough. They might not want you on the trail because you're going to clog it up, and you could be a problem on the trail.
The first time I presented this, the example that was used was the secret powder stash in Breckenridge. The locals aren't going to tell me, some dude from Texas, where the good powder is. And I get that there is always going to be that protected local information. My buddy's a big fisherman. He won't even tell me where he goes fishing. So I don't expect him to tell some yahoo who's just checking in from out of town. I get that and I respect that, but at the same time, there's still a large wealth of information that they are going to be willing to share. And that's what I'm going after. Sure, you might develop a relationship and that might eventually gain you access to that, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not asking for that protected information. I respect that because I have that own protected information on my local area. And you're right. There's no way around it. I'm not asking for that. I'm going after the information that people are willing to share.
Hey Ryan, interesting stuff. Right now, do you just have a mobile app or the same functionality is also on a mobile website?
Right now it is Apple, iOS, iPhone only.
I see.
So mobile application only. Because when I started, I had to pick something. I have an iPhone. The Swift language seemed to be the most accessible to learn, and so that was the route that I went.
Well, typically, as an average user, how often do you see somebody using this service?
Right now, not very often, because it's just immediate network, friends and family, and I haven't done a good job of really developing it out to further implementation, and I haven't done a good job about marketing it and explaining the functionality of it.
Well, the reason I was asking is, with over a decade of experience in providing IT solutions, I would like to understand what is easier and most cost-effective to penetrate. And then I always suggest for people to start off with a mobile website. Then a mobile app is more expensive. And then also there's a psychological resistance for people to download an app versus on a web, we can just go in and then do all this stuff. So we can talk later if at all you need any insights on that. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
No, Ryan, this is interesting. It's probably more a comment than a question. Is I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to be the Uber of local information rather than the Facebook of local information. And I think the distinction, I would pound that wedge super hard, because what you're saying is, I've got a need, someone's got some information, you make the transaction, you get the hell out. You're not friends forever. When I look at Facebook and Twitter now, it's like my attic, right? I mean, you've got, hundreds and hundreds of friends, 3/4 of them you're blocking because of their political comments. It's really a disaster out there right now. So I think your angle here is, we're not going to track your data. We're not going to love you forever. Just, I have a question, you have an answer, and I'm going to get the hell out. I do think that does leave you with the challenge of, then how do you pay for it? But I think it might be that, with the businesses involved, all you're getting are the questions.
Yep.
Or maybe even the answers, and I would even tell them who's sending it to it. And like, everybody's data is protected, and all of the restaurants or the local places hearing, here's what people are saying in both ways. Here's what they want to know. Here's what other people are saying, and that's it. And I think that could be your marketing angle: is, I'm really not everybody.
I appreciate you saying that, because that says what I've tried to express in so many words elsewhere. Yeah, I'm not interested in that long-term friendship. And with all the things going on with Facebook and privacy and everything else, I've kind of noticed, and I don't know if the feeling is shared elsewhere, but I've noticed that I got off Facebook 5 years ago. I don't miss it, and more of my friends are getting off, and now you have privacy issues. And I'm trying to fill a void that I think Facebook may have satisfied in the beginning, but as they got bigger and bigger, it lost that initial intent. So thank you for saying that.
Okay, Ryan, we're just going to wrap it up. This is really engaging. We had a lot of questions, a lot of interest. So we'll give you one last opportunity to say, what are you looking for and how can we help you today?
Thank you all. Your questions are great. It really, what helps me is hearing the different questions. Some questions I've had every time I've presented, some are new. So just that difference in feedback, how y'all view it, what are the criticisms that y'all have, that helps me on deciding where to go next. I really got the best advice so far before I even started. Matt told me about the accelerator programs, and really my limitation right now is this has been a really fun personal pet project, and I've got to make a decision on whether that's where it stops or take it to the next level. And to take it to the next level, I've got to have people around me that have more experience. So Matt's given me a wealth of information. All of y'all's questions just help me confirm I want to keep pursuing this. I think there's some validation there, and that's what y'all have all given me. So thank you very much.